Hey, Herrst, Alter, was ist das?
Do you speak English?
What is this? What is all this for?
Oh, this is just for Schnitz and Giggles.
Schnitzel Giggles!
Welcome to Schnitz and Giggles, the podcast that stumbles upon the humor of cross-cultural confusion and life in Vienna, Austria, through the experiences of an Auslander and his Wiener.
Brought to you by the edelwisecrackers.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for the purpose of entertainment only and is not a replacement for therapy.
Guten Hallo and welcome to the Schnitz and Giggles podcast with me, Michael.
And me, Lucas. Guten Hallo.
Yeah, Guten Hallo. So, Lukey, how are you today?
I'm fine, Mikey. How are you?
Beautiful sunshiny day?
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah, you can almost hear it on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure our listeners can hear the sunshine.
Sunshine is really special.
It's loud.
In Vienna.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So here we are in Vienna.
Here we are in Vienna.
All right, great podcast. Well, bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you later.
I think we should try this again.
Yeah, so what do you got for me today, Lucas?
Well, speaking of Vienna, now that we're talking about it, I thought a major thing for people outside of Austria need to know about Austria and Vienna and the differences between Austria and Vienna. Because, as we all know, Vienna is a city in Austria. What about the rest of it? This is my opening question to you.
Okay.
What do you know of the rest of it, of Austria that's not Vienna? Have you ever traveled somewhere or you know how it's kind of structured? What do you know?
Yeah, I have traveled throughout Austria. I know that it gets, right when you leave Vienna, it starts getting hilly and mountainy pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I know that there are different states.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how many states there are?
How many? Ooh, a number? I don't know. Maybe if I...
Should I give you
let's say...
a number, 4 options?
8? 6.
You're pretty close. 8 was closer than 6.
8 was closer than 6. 10. 9. 9. Yes?
Yeah. 9.
Yeah, 9.
Yeah, 9. Yes,
okay.
9 states.
All right. I suppose if I would have tried to list them off, I would have gotten close.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would have gotten to 9.
Yeah. Well, the one special thing about it is that Vienna, it's the only state that's also a city, or the only city that's also a state.
New York.
New York. That's how you... All the others... Vienna is its own capital city of the states of Austria.
Very confusing.
And the capital city of the country as well.
Yeah.
So it has the double tax on it.
Yes.
But do you know any names of other, of those states?
Yeah, sure. I think I would have gotten closer to the number 9 if I would have actually stopped to think about it and name them off. Mm-hmm. So, Vienna. Wien, sehr gut. Niederösterreich.
Mm-hmm. Lower Austria.
Yeah, Lower Austria.
And if there's Lower Austria,
there's Upper
Austria.
Oberösterreich.
Exactly.
Okay. Tirol.
Mm-hmm.
Styria.
Mm-hmm.
Vorarlberg.
Yeah, pretty good.
Is that one?
Yeah, Vorarlberg.
Yeah, Vorarlberg.
Where was Mozart born?
Salzburg. Is Salzburg?
Salzburg is one, yeah.
So that's also
Well, okay, Salzburg is a city.
Yeah.
But the state surrounding the city of Salzburg is also called Salzburg.
All right.
So you have to distinguish between Salzburg city and Salzburg country.
Just like with Vienna.
Well, no.
No.
Because in Vienna, the city limits and the state limits are identical.
So Salzburg is more because it has the city limits plus
then the surrounding area would be also called Salzburg.
Okay.
It's not a special case.
So we're at 7.
Yeah, so we're missing only 2 more.
Carinthia.
Yeah, Canton.
And
it's very funny that you don't know the last one. Well, you probably know the last one, but you ignored it because it's the least, popular state in Austria for some people. It's very close to Vienna, though.
I cannot bring it up.
Okay. It's one that
you're going to say it. I'm going to immediately be like, yeah, of course.
It's at the border to Hungary.
Yeah.
And it's it's right next to Niederösterreich and Styria, Steiermark.
Oh, Steiermark.
Well, Steiermark is Styria.
Steiermark is Styria.
You named that.
I named it.
I mean, you got 8 out of 9. I mean,
which is pretty good.
That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty good, pretty darn good. Gold. Yes. But I should have all of them.
Yeah. So the one you're missing is Burgenland.
Burgenland. Yeah. Okay.
So interesting situation with Burgenland with the rest of Austria is that a lot of Austrians say, who needs them? It's kind of a strange historical perspective because it's also the youngest province, the youngest state of Austria. It was just added after World War I.
Because of its southern border location or
Well,
eastern border location?
Well, one part is, I mean, there have been German speakers living there. It was used to be part of Hungary, though.
Yeah.
But German-speaking Hungarians, in a sense, it was kind of like this overlap situation. And in a way, Austria got the Burgenland because they took one part of Tyrol and gave it to the Italians. And so that was sort of the deal after, World War One. They split up some countries and distributed parts.
And the border demarcations after World War One have such long-term, maybe not so much in this part of the world. I mean, there are, but I mean, that was part of World War II, part of Germany's issue.
Yes.
Much of the Middle Eastern wars are because of the borders.
Again and again,
that's the issue. World War One. Thanks a lot, World War One.
Yeah. The conflict is not resolved even after more than 100 years. More than 100 years. Yeah. But I mean, I personally like the Burgenland a lot. So I'm not one of those who say like part of the country. It's quite different from the rest of Austria. Let's put it this way. It's very flat. It's kind of very warm. Usually, like in the summertime, it's kind of very nice, and it has one of the larger lakes there.
Yeah.
It's the closest big lake to Vienna. So lots of Viennese go there for pleasure, for swimming, surfing, whatever they want to do there.
They're not surfing there.
Well, not surfing as in...
They're not surfing. Don't even. They're stand-up paddleboarding. Is that what they're doing?
Well, they have a board and then they have this little sail.
Okay, they're windsurfing.
They're windsurfing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't precise about it.
Man, I don't want to be
they're not waiting for
jerk surfer, bro. I'm like,
they're not waiting for waves.
First off, hold on. I mean, they'll be waiting a while.
Yeah, like
first off, if they're going surfing there, then I will be visiting soon. But
no.
Yeah,
but it's like just a 1 hour drive there.
Yeah. So aside from having a target lake, what would be a geographical indicator? Flat? Is there anything happening there? People don't like it.
Well,
you said.
Yeah. Well, it's because of the people.
Oh.
It also has historical reasons that in the Burgenland, since it was just attached to Austria later on, it doesn't have that kind of the same kind of history and also not in the same educational way.
Yeah, I don't want to make our Burgenlandian listeners upset here.
No, yeah, it's just historically there have been more like blue collar type of workers like living there, and they would often work in Vienna, but their education level wasn't that high. So lots of times the people in Vienna would make fun of them because they didn't get it right away.
Okay.
So Vienna, especially and the surrounding area, came up with a lot of Burgenländer jokes. It's like redneck jokes.
Yeah.
And so that's why they always kind of look down on the Burgenländer. But I mean, that was at least more than 50 years ago, or when maybe there was still this gap. But by now, the Burgenland has caught on, and it's a very thriving area actually. And so you couldn't say they have less education or like than the rest of Austria. But in a way, of course, their reputation it's hard to get rid of that.
Sure. So
some people make fun of them. Although one of the greatest and the best wine comes from Burgenland as well.
All right.
Keep that in mind. There's lots of spas there because there's some hot fountains. They have lots of spas.
What's a major town in Burgenland?
Well, the capital city would be Eisenstadt.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And maybe
Eisenstadt.
But it's very, very small, but really nice. I mean, and if you want to go biking, for example, since it's so flat, it's very popular. You can even go around the lake. The interesting thing is that part of the lake is actually in Hungary. So part of the lake belongs to Hungary, part of the lake belongs to Austria.
Is this lake?
Neusiedler See.
Neusiedler See.
Yeah.
Not the other big lake that's all in Hungary.
No, not Balaton.
Balaton.
No.
That's right.
Well, speaking of visiting other places like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever had this experience, but imagine you say or someone we talk about expats here again. Yeah?
Current expats. Living in Vienna.
They move here, but have a different passport, different nationality. But one day they feel like, hey, let's go skiing or let's go to Burgenland for some great lake experience, windsurfing.
Wine and windsurfing.
Yeah.
The big W.
And they might rent a car or they even have a car in Vienna. And they go to that place. You might go to Salzburg, you might go to Steiermark or Burgenland, wherever. And when you get out of the car, you meet some locals, and maybe you haven't talked yet, so they don't maybe know that you're not even from around. You look like an Austrian to them, okay? It's possible that you might get treated a little bit worse than others.
These other states have beef with Vienna, huh?
And it would be because of your license plate.
Ah, of course.
Because you have a Viennese car.
I have that big W on
the big W on your car that's
beginning of my license
just
plate.
Rolled up. Well, as soon as you tell them you're like, you're from America, or you're like, yeah, and of course, tourist, and they might have other other prejudices about
other
tourists
ideas
here,
about who you are.
but at least it's not going to mistake you for the Viennese any longer. So what I'm trying to say here, there's a special relationship going on between Vienna and the rest of Austria that maybe you should be aware of when you live here. And it's just fascinating because it goes both ways. That's the funny thing about it. So when a person outside of Vienna notices, okay, you're just visiting from Vienna, they might make fun of you. And if someone from other provinces or states in Austria moves or just visits Vienna, you also get made fun of because of that.
So as you're driving,
the driving part is
somebody will be like, oh yeah, this is why they're driving this badly. They're from Vienna. They don't know how to drive the mountain roads.
It's funny when you come to visit any place like this. So you go to Tyrol, for example, and they're like, yeah, I'm from Vienna. Might get a little quiet first of all, and then they might ask you, so do you know that milk doesn't grow in cartons and stuff like that? Those kind of questions.
City slickers.
Yeah, like they've never seen a cow in real life. It can be really amusing from time to time, but sometimes there's really some beef or some misunderstandings, at least with them. And
of course, you had serious, like of note, an experience that was traumatizing for you. You get out of the car somewhere, and
not really traumatizing, but I mean, sometimes I would hear in passing, or like you're just, I don't know, you're just a gas station and you feel the car, and then someone might say, "Oh, there's another Wiener." I've never been attacked like in your face.
That's good. I would be pretty surprised
for being this. Well, it's not impossible.
I suppose.
If at all, I've seen it the other way around, that Viennese people have been very confrontational towards others. The one thing you have to consider is Vienna is so different from the rest of Austria.
Yeah.
First of all, it's the only real larger city we have. It was October 2023, not too long ago, that we surpassed the 2 million mark, 2 million people living in Vienna.
And what's the total population of Austria is
around 9 million.
9 million.
Okay, so you have 9 million, and 2 of those 2 million are living in Vienna. Plus, there's a lot of people living in the outskirts, in the exurbs.
Yeah.
Suburbs,
exurbs.
Exurbs. Actually, this is a real term.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Never
look it up.
Okay, well, I'll look that up later, I guess.
Yes, or
maybe a different podcast.
I have to create a Wikipedia article quickly.
I'm going to look it now.
Look it up now.
Yeah, before you have a chance. While you talk.
Yeah, well, let me just keep on talking. You don't have to listen.
Yeah, normal. Mm-hmm. Just exurbs. Oh, it's a prosperous area beyond the city's suburbs.
Exactly. So a lot of rich people live just outside of Vienna.
Yeah.
But they work in Vienna. And maybe they're even they were born in Vienna, but they just moved out when they had the financial situation.
Yeah.
So that's what a lot of people do. They buy a house, but are still part of the greater Vienna community, so to speak, or area. In Niederösterreich, which surrounds Vienna, you only have 1.7 million. Although Niederösterreich is the largest of those states.
By space.
By space.
By land.
By land, space is, so that's the largest, and it only has 1.7 million. Vienna is the smallest one, because it's just a city.
Yeah.
But it has 2 million people living there. So it's really, the density, of course, is completely...
Of course, big city living.
And the Burgenland, for example, that only has 300,000 people. So you could say, I don't know, a quarter of the population lives in and around Vienna, and the rest is just the rest of Austria. Proportions are just very strange.
Is this something beyond just because I feel like if you spoke to people who live in capital cities or big cities, there's this kind of tension between the non-city livers and the other places. Like in America, we have the flyover states. You know, these states that people normally fly over.
You don't stay.
You don't stay. They have certain opinions about people from certain states and obviously people in, especially like being from California, we've experienced, driving through the country with our California license plates and getting, you're from California. You're not staying, are you? These types of things.
Stranger.
Is there something specific or unique about Austrian maybe history or culture that would speak to this, or is it just another expression of country folk versus city folk?
Yes, there's something special. Although, of course, what you're saying is absolutely right. That these things, the countryside people and the city people, I think any country would have the same kind of issues with, we don't like the big city people. We don't like those country people. Yes, although, like I said, it's completely unnatural that a country would have such a large city that's not really a big country. And of course, here again, we have the historical development. For example, Graz is the second largest city in Austria and only has like 600,000, I think. 300,000, it's actually half of it. 300,000, I think it's approaching that number.
So the next largest city is really not
a
large city.
So you have 2 million, and the next step, second place is 300,000.
Yeah.
And like Salzburg has only like 160,000 or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the other Austrian cities, can you call them cities even, are just no match to the size of Vienna.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that is also, of course, the historical, that Vienna used to be the capital city of a great empire. A big part of Europe was governed by people residing in Vienna.
Yeah.
And to this day, actually, Vienna is the second largest German-speaking city in the world. So only Berlin is larger than Vienna. So all the other big cities, so to speak, like Hamburg or München, like you talk about, Stuttgart, they are, as a matter of fact, Frankfurt, they're smaller.
Still smaller than Vienna.
Hamburg is really big because it has a really huge, what's the word?
Suburbs and exurbs?
No. Port, yeah. Like I was thinking of harbor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, port, harbor.
Yeah.
And it basically makes up half of the size of the whole city. So size-wise, Hamburg is a little larger, but population is still smaller than Vienna. But Vienna, coming back to Vienna, it used to be this huge capital city that's competing with Paris and Berlin.
Sure.
And then most of it got cut off and was left with just those German-speaking states that used to be part of the monarchy and were left with Vienna after World War I. So I don't know if you are familiar with the term Wasserkopf. Waterhead, literally, yes. Right. It's actually, it sounds funny, but it's actually a really bad disease. The actual word for it in English, I think, is hydrocephaly.
Okay.
I think.
Sure.
It's a pretty bad disease where water really is kind of stored up in in the brain, the fluids.
Okay.
And your head gets really big because of that.
Oh.
So it's really bad. But the term Wasserkopf is used as also like in a symbolic way of saying if something is out of proportion, like your head is way too big for your body.
Yeah.
So the people started calling Vienna the Wasserkopf of Austria because it's just way, way oversized. And we don't need that large of a city to govern this fairly small country.
Yeah.
But if you live in Vienna, or just visit Vienna, you'll see it's very imperial. Like it's almost like the monarchy is still going on, right? So the Viennese, they live in a way in a city that sort of pretends to be the city of the emperor.
Right.
When there's no more emperor. And the people living outside of Vienna, like in the rest of Austria, is like, we don't need that. We don't need all these things. But of course, it's part of the history. You can't just ignore it or eliminate it.
Yeah, because there was a very, very like intentional plan in like the 1880s to make Vienna rival Paris.
Exactly,
and other cities, but
they
really Paris.
They wanted to make it big, yeah.
I mean, even the guy who designed the Ringstrasse is the same guy who redesigned the streets of Paris. It's an AP history question for you.
Wow.
Haussmann was his name.
Haussmann?
Yeah. I don't know if he was an Austrian guy or a German guy.
Well, it doesn't sound very French, at least.
No, exactly. Well, I know he's not French, but that's why the Ringstrasse will kind of give you the same feeling or vibes as being on the Champs-Élysées, because it's the wide boulevard with the trees along the side, and so that with all that building happening like at that same time, like all those buildings along the Ringstrasse are like 1880s, 1890s, right? They were all being built at the same time. But it was all very, very specific to bring Vienna out of like the Dark Ages, I guess, into the Imperial Age.
I think it started in the 1850s or 1860s.
Yeah, okay.
And it took them very long to complete those.
Well, there's a lot of buildings.
There's a lot of buildings.
Too. A lot of big buildings that even now would.
Yeah, that is another fascinating story, the Ringstrasse thing.
So that attitude then, kind of at the turn of the century into the 1900s, that's one that it seems like it still has passed down in the genetics of Viennese people. Is that there's a bit of a chip on their shoulder in a way of like, hey, we should rival Paris.
Yes.
Like we're not just a small country capital. We're the capital of an empire. So
the point is we still have that city that can compete with Paris and like talking about living standards and the quality of life here. It exceeds even Paris and London.
It exceeds everybody.
Right. But we do not have the country to back us up. That's the problem. Like there's no big country.
Right.
Say like, okay, we are so large and we can do so much. It's only the city itself that's still up there. And because of all these historical reasons, Vienna is so important to the whole country that in the end, if you want to make it in Austria, you have to go to Vienna.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of young people who come to university in Vienna who are from other places.
Yes.
I mean,
and so many people who are like, say there's the people living in Austria, I mean, the best of the village, they would leave and go and study in Vienna. And of course, there's universities in Graz and in Innsbruck and in Salzburg and so on.
But those aren't for the best. Those are for the...
Well,
sorry to any of our listeners who are in university in Graz or something.
No, I mean, I would even say like the quality, I would say like in all the universities in Austria would be very high.
Everywhere.
Actually, Innsbruck is very famous. It's very popular for medicine students, for example.
All right.
But if you want to study something very specific, some things you will only find in Vienna.
Yeah.
And so if the best of the village leave, and so all the great thinkers, the high achievers of your town, they move out and they study there. And then they find a job there, of course, because if you want to have a specific job, you won't find it around the corner in your little town.
Right.
Most of the time. So they stay there. And so they dislike Vienna even more because it takes their best people.
Stole away the good kids.
Stole away the good kids.
And they're stuck with the chuckleheads.
Doesn't give them back. Yes, and then the children grew up there, and they grew up as these privileged brats.
Yeah.
And when they come to visit in the countryside, they're like all super Viennese, and they can't really like connect with the roots of where they're coming from.
They don't know how to milk a cow.
They know how to milk a cow.
Oh my gosh.
They can't even tell a goat from a cow.
Such a shame.
Can't tell
a goat from a cow.
Yes, I'm sure it has happened.
And I hope not.
That's a weird dog.
Yeah.
That's a dog. It's a goat.
It's a cow. That's the biggest dog I've ever seen.
But here's another funny thing about the situation. If people move away from the states, from those provinces into Vienna, they themselves have been observed by other Viennese people that those people start making fun of all the Austrians not living in Vienna as well. Okay?
Yeah.
Because for them, it is, of course, the home place is their home place, but also sometimes they just want to show, okay, like I made it.
Yeah.
So I'm a city dweller now, like I'm a metropolitan now.
Yeah.
I'm not this village idiot or something. And so this is really funny when they actually start talking badly about, probably not their own people. Like if they're from Tyrol, they might not talk about that Tyrol, but they might talk about the guy from Salzburg, like it's like, he's just...
Yeah,
he's just like
country bum.
Like a country bum, like a redneck or something like that. A lot of the Austrians have said when they first came to Vienna, it was too much for them. They said, this city is just too big for me.
I can understand that.
I don't know if you've ever been to Innsbruck.
I have.
Innsbruck is just in a valley surrounded by mountains, and there's not enough space, so the city couldn't be any bigger.
Right.
So it's a fairly small town, although it's the capital city of Tyrol.
Yeah.
And so I've heard a Tyrolean say, Innsbruck was already too big for me. Like he's lived in Tyrol, and so I don't know, some small town. And when he went to Innsbruck, that was overwhelming. That was overwhelming. And then he went to Vienna, and it's like, it's stressful. There's so many cars, so much noise.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, too many people, anything you get in a big city. Also, something you will hardly see even in the other fairly bigger cities in Austria, you will hardly see beggars or homeless people. So the amount of, I mean, you don't see a lot in Vienna either, compared to maybe other international standards, but still they're still around.
Yeah.
Some just show up in very prominent places where the tourists dwell and homeless dwell, and
where there's more infrastructure to
where there's more infrastructure there, or drug addicts, something that you're not used to when you just grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, Vienna is so filthy, Vienna is so bad. How can you even live there? How can people live there? Like it's stinking, the cars, it's smelling. And yes, I don't know if you knew that there's an official education program by the Austrian government, Ministry of Education, that kind of supports and organizes trips to Vienna for students.
Really?
And actually vice versa. There's something we call Schullandwoche.
Yeah.
So that would be like a school week you spend in the countryside for Viennese kids.
Yeah.
And then there's a thing called Stadtwoche, which is a city week. So people from out there, from Salzburg or Kärnten, they might book a week in Vienna, like the teachers and the students, they come here and they live in a youth hostel. And then there's actually like some program they can choose from: culture, you go to a museum, or you go to theater, opera.
Like it's really focused beyond just like, hey, we're going to a new place just because it's outside the city. They're like, we're going and we have a curriculum that we're going to work on
in a way to
learn about this place. So we're not as...
The goal is we get to learn, we get to know our capital city.
Yeah.
That's kind of the educational goal there. So what does Vienna have to offer?
Yeah.
They would be riding the subway for the first time in their life, maybe, or something like that as well. or being on an escalator.
Yeah.
First time in their lives. So they might visit the parliament.
Yeah.
The whole government, the president, they all reside here in Vienna. So they might be visiting those places. And so for some, I don't know, 15, 16-year-olds students, that might be the first thing they would ever find out about.
So for our expats or visitors to Vienna, do we have any advice for them if they're coming to, I mean, they're tourists, so they're going to be, don't rent a car from Vienna, like rent a car from somewhere else.
that might help, yes.
Take the train.
Yes, I mean, if you're renting a car, or you might just visit, if you go skiing and so I mean, just make it known that you're a tourist and not a Viennese from the beginning.
Yeah.
Then you might get some better treatment. But just maybe one more note on driving a car. Also, that's something that both sides make fun of, because the Viennese, they are being made fun of because, they just don't drive down the mountain in maximum speed. They're kind of more careful usually.
Right.
But when a mountain person takes their car to Vienna, they also drive very carefully. They will just be like the Viennese car drivers will be annoyed with them. And of course, there's so many things to look out for. Like there's so many street signs and so many speed bumps and so many, and the tram, the bus,
and bike riders.
Yes, bikes, pedestrians, so much going on. It's like many people have said it before with wherever they live. People have said this about Vienna. So, okay, we like Vienna, we just don't like the Viennese.
Yeah.
And so the same thing might be said about the other side. There's one chant at football games that the Viennese clubs would love to chant when they're playing another club from the provinces. And they would often yell in the face, they would yell, "Wir sind eure Hauptstadt, ihr Bauern," which translates as, "We are your capital city, you farmers."
Thanks.
So that's kind of what they just try to remind them of. Even if you win this game, you're still just the farmers. You're just still farmers, no matter what you do.
The farmers are like, you can't eat without us.
That's a good point as well, yes. And maybe one thing that's unique to Vienna compared to other conflicts between big city versus countryside is the Viennese dialect often carries a very arrogant tone along with it.
Really?
If spoken correctly.
Okay. Yeah, if spoken correctly.
Then
says a true Viennese.
Yes. It sounds like if you ever listen to Falco, for example, like we talked about music the other day, Falco actually was very, very good at getting this kind of tone across. So imagine you getting out of the car and you're out there in the ski area and you're the Viennese and you're like, "Oh, was hot denn hier? Was mach mal? Ja, geh mal, ess mal was." Yeah, and they talk like this.
Yeah, that does sound a little stuck up.
Yeah, so so bring me my Schnitzel, but right away.
Yeah.
And so this is how they would talk. And also they're not really interested in learning anything from the locals. It's just I'm from Vienna and I'm well educated.
Yeah.
What can I even learn from you? What do you have to offer? On the twist side, when Viennese use their dialect in a different way, they might sound very primitive as well.
Yeah.
So imagine just the guy in the tank top and the beer bottle.
Yeah.
That might sound not too pleasing.
Yeah, I've run into a couple of these guys on the streets here and there.
Yes. But there is this kind of, what they say is the Viennese that actually is the Schönbrunn accent. So Schönbrunn being the palace of the emperor. So people living closely by the Schönbrunn area would have spoken in this more sophisticated manner with your nose high up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the Schönbrunn way of talking. But that doesn't really sound good to the non-Viennese ears.
Yeah.
And therefore, we might not be welcomed all the time in the rest of Austria.
Yeah, it is crazy how accents can give us away so quickly. Obviously, I have that experience quite regularly, getting exposed as an American anytime I'm trying speaking any language other than English. Yep. And then when I do speak in English, it gives it away a little bit. Yeah, well, good. So if you come to Austria, just understand there are some complexities to the culture, to the way people interact. That the Austrian identity can be held differently from one end of the country to the other.
Yes, and maybe you might not feel so bad about yourself now if you say "Oh, I really wish I could sound like a local." Sometimes it's better not to sound like a local, and that might be your advantage from time to time to say "Hey, I'm just a tourist."
Yeah,
I'm just
I'm not from around here.
We're from around here. There's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, so don't be scared, listener. Just come on over. If you're visiting Vienna, maybe take a little drive outside of Vienna because you will have a different experience. Yeah. Between Vienna and some of the other outlying states.
Yes, because one thing is true, you might have an unfriendly experience outside of Vienna, but you will have an unfriendly experience for sure if you're in Vienna.
Guaranteed. Yeah, guaranteed. Just go, although less and less. Less and less. I'm finding fewer of those experiences. All right, well that's probably enough. So, good bye-bye.
Good and bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this Schnitzel and Giggles episode.
Remember to follow and subscribe if you want more content like this from the Edelwisecrackers.
Don't be shy about commenting or leaving feedback. Until next time.
So long,
Farewell.
good Wiedersehen,
Bye bye.